Okay, I think, Ryan, it's time to say hello to everyone.
Yep, it looks like we've got a full room. More people keep coming in, so yeah, let's get started.
That's really cool. So, and we're going to keep it short at the beginning because you're not here because of Ryan and me. You're here because of Doug, which is a good thing. So, of course, he's going to talk about PowerShell scripting transformed, impact of ChatGPT and AI. And if after the session you still have some energy, then the plan is that Ryan and I, and maybe everybody who has also attended PSConf in Prague, we want to talk about, a little bit, make a little review about what we experienced, what was the highlight. I can see Emrys joined us, who had his first session there, which was very successful. So maybe we have a chance to just exchange a little bit of each other's experience in Prague. So the agenda. Yeah, a little welcome. Then obviously we have Doug, and then we're going to talk about PSConf. And then there is a little outro. Just for maybe if you're the first time in the session, Ryan and we started it way back in 2019, right?
Back before COVID.
Yeah. Those were the days. Yeah, and then we were, on hiatus, I would say, and we started it this year. And Guy was the first presenter. So thanks again, Guy. That was a cool session. And if you want to follow us, we are obviously on Meetup. That's how you registered, obviously, I guess. You can find us on Twitter. The previous recordings are on YouTube. I will paste the links later on in the chat. And a little plug here. The Script Runner is sponsoring the session and the user group. And if you want to have some PowerShell cheat sheets, security ebook for PowerShell, go to our website and you can just get it from there. And pretty useful stuff. So with this, I would say, Doug, take it away.
Okay.
We are again very happy to have you with us. And as you posted yesterday, we are celebrating the milestone for the downloads of your PowerShell AI module, right?
Yep, it's over 10. It just crossed 10,000 downloads.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers to that. Yeah.
Had another 5 just since I refreshed my screen.
It's going viral. All right. Cool.
It's hotcakes. And thank you for having me and inviting me. Really appreciate the opportunity. And welcome everybody. If folks who don't know me, I'll leave a little information at the end. But basically, my name's Doug Finke. I've been a PowerShell MVP since 2009. So I think that's been 15 years, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me. And I wrote a book about PowerShell a number of years ago, PowerShell for Developers. And I've been playing with PowerShell for years. I was a developer before that. Oops. And somebody just spilt the beer. And so the recent stuff that I'm also, if you've noticed, I have a module out there called ImportExcel, which lets you interact with Excel. It's got over 3 million downloads.
Where?
Uh-oh.
Oh, okay.
So that's one of the things I've done. I've developed a number of tools for the PowerShell community, and the latest one I'm worked on is bringing ChatGPT into the console. So you don't need to leave the console, and you can actually use it directly there, or you can actually use it inside of your PowerShell scripts. So I'm going to go through a couple of slides, and then, as we say, I'll be demo heavy.
All right, so you can start sharing your screen. That would be cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Should work.
Thanks for reminding me.
Transformer may be a little bit out of place. I don't quite understand what those are.
Is that for me?
No. This is we have to, I think, watch out to mute a few people, I guess.
Okay. So let's talk about PowerShell and how it's transforming scripting and see the impact of all this good stuff. So I like to start out with, there's a bunch of camps out there about AI. There are the doomers, there's the deniers, and there's people on either extreme. I look at it as it's time to embrace the power of what this AI thing is. It's an emerging skill, and I like to say AI will not replace you, but somebody who knows how to use it will. And hopefully you'll see through some of the demos what that means. So, you can think about ChatGPT and AI. You can imagine it as a highly capable assistant or a really smart intern. It's always on. It's efficient. It's accurate. It's not 100% accurate. We'll talk about that in the slide. It's available 24/7. It can generate scripts. It can offer suggestions to what you're doing. It can help problem solving without breaks or downtime. It does learn quickly. This is not a Google search process where you put in a bunch of words and it's a keyword search. It's different. And the key thing is what's the difference is nowadays is that AI is making humans scalable. It handles large volumes of work. GPT integration increases scripting efficiency and scalability. And at the end, it can free up human talent. So you can kind of think about that like when PowerShell first came out, it was like, well, we can really automate a ton of stuff. And we can automate the toil and we can free ourselves up. So that's enough about what that is. I always like this slide only because, ChatGPT came out in November and it took 2 months to reach 100 million users. And yes, Threads was released, I guess, in the last week, and they're a Twitter competition. So they actually went to like 50 million users, like in the first few days. But then again, all they did was bring over all of their Instagram folks, and they made them available. So they kind of cheated. But it's interesting to see that this kind of a thing like ChatGPT is taken off. I'll talk about a couple of things. Maybe I'll be able to point out, like I'll say something like, oh yeah, this is the old model that was being used in ChatGPT. And when I say something's old in the AI space, we're talking like 3 months, maybe 6. So if you want to play along, you can increase my 10,000 count download. That'd be awesome. You can do an install module on PowerShellAI. You can click on the project link and get to the GitHub repo. And you get the OpenAI key, but if you run it without one, it won't prompt you for it. It'll throw an error saying, hey, you need to get yourself a key, and it'll give you a link where to do it. So one of the key things to know about ChatGPT, I liken it to, I don't know how many folks there know Forrest Gump, but ChatGPT is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. ChatGPT, let me move this. ChatGPT hallucinates. And it confabulates. So if you ask it something that it doesn't know, it will make stuff up. I have asked it questions about my ImportExcel module, and I said, hey, how would you do this with ImportExcel? And to be honest, when I first started playing, I've been playing with AI and the copilots for like a year or two. But when GPT came out and the web piece came out, I would ask it about ImportExcel, and it's only trained to 2021. So it wasn't really trained on enough PowerShell. So I would have to tell it more about my module, and it would give me answers, but it would make up functions that I didn't have. And the weirdest thing about it was I was like, wow, that's better names than I had. So you got to be really careful what you're doing. You wouldn't go up to Google, you wouldn't go up to Stack Overflow, look for stuff and copy paste it and push it to production. Well, definitely true with ChatGPT. You're responsible for what you use in production with this tool. So you got to stay aware. So new to the scene. So what I'm not going to do in the demos, sorry, Alexander. So there's a new thing that was released about a month or so ago called function calling. You can now describe functions and have the model intelligently choose the output to output a JSON object containing the arguments to call those functions. So you can create a prompt, and the prompt is just basically text. And then that's how you talk to a model. You can say, what is 1 + 3? Or you can say, hey, I'm trying to find out the weather in a different part of the world. That is also a prompt. If you give it the function calling, it can figure out from the descriptions of functions you give it, which function to choose and how to pass arguments to it. It won't call the function for you, but it will match those up. And because it's AI, it does an incredible job. It's a new way to more reliably connect GPT capabilities with external tools and APIs. That's all I'm going to say about it. I've got pieces coming out in the AI module that's going to work with that, and some videos that are going to happen. Very cool stuff, but we're not going to cover it.
And just a second, and you're gonna have a live stream next week talking about this, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to find the link and put it into the chat.
I appreciate that. I'm not going to talk about function calling on Tuesday. I'm going to talk about the next bullet point, code interpreter.
Okay.
So code interpreter came out on Friday. To say that it's mind-blowing is understatement. It's really unbelievable. It makes it possible to run Python code within the ChatGPT.
Okay.
So I'm not going to show anything about that today, but on Tuesday, I'm going to do It's not going to be, I'm not going to have a planned presentation. I'm just going to fire up YouTube, get on the live stream. I'm going to start showing how I think about it and start using it, start asking questions. People, if you want to join and ask questions, and we'll chuck that into the thing, and we'll make a big mixture and see what happens. Another bullet point, too many announcements across the boards for improvements, product launches, and more. I mean, I think there's a couple of hundred products come out every week. Everything from Poe to Anthropic, they come out with new models, new capabilities. They all compete with each other. There's things like LangChain, all this kind of stuff. They come out with stuff. OpenAI borrows it, and Anthropic borrows from OpenAI. So it's really an amazing ecosystem at this point, and we'll see where it happens. And I've tried to keep up. I've kept up with the OpenAI stuff for the PowerShell AI module. So if you want to play around with it, it's a good way to see what's cooking. And with that, I'm going to just kick off the demo. Fair enough?
All stuff.
All right, so there's a bunch of ways. So since I'm using PowerShell, right, we know PowerShell integrates with almost everything. So the first thing I want to show, this is what they call a Polyglot interactive notebook. So if you've worked with Jupyter notebooks, it's a way that you can structure your code or your that you can give to colleagues and friends and family, so that, like, for example, the top piece, each one of these are a cell. Wherever you see like a little button or this like highlighted backlit highlight thing, you can do, this is a piece of runnable code. In this case, the first one is a piece of markdown. So I can actually describe the code that's coming next or whatever else I'm putting in these next set of cells. So I kind of think of this stuff as executable documentation. So if I actually double click on this, okay, this is actual markdown. And when I run it by and I render it by clicking the check, it actually renders into pulling in the images, doing the proper markdown tags for, heading ones and so on. I'm not going to go deep into what Polyglot notebooks are. That's a different discussion, a different presentation, but it's really cool. You just have to download the extension in Visual Studio Code if you're a Visual Studio Code user, and you're off to the races. And everybody in the data science space uses it in Python and R, and that's coming to Visual Studio Code, and everybody in the OpenAI space and all the large language models use this as a way to communicate about this. Not seeing my screen share. Did I drop it?
No, it's all good.
Okay. My eyes are shut. Thank you, Guy. I'm going to have a comment on Twitter about that. Guy always watches presentations with his eyes closed. Don't be scared, dude. It's only AI. You're going to be fine.
It's a third eye, maybe, Like...
He's meditating to the anyway. So let's kick off. So the first thing, so you can think that when I'm going to run each one of these things with either a click of a button or I'm going to press Control-Alt-Enter, you can think of it as me typing at the command line. So if I press Control-Enter, you can see that it executes. It tells me how long it took. It gives me a check mark. If I had gotten an error, it would show an X. So what I did was I just made an array. So if we're all PowerShell folks here, right? So I gave it an array with the strings Python, Rust, Go, and PowerShell. So those are all programming languages. Now, my module is already loaded. One of the functions I have in there is called chat. So this actually enables you to communicate with GPT. So I'm going to loop through all those languages, right? Python, Rust, Go, and PowerShell. We're going to do some ICE. So, and I'm going to give it the prompt, write a hello world program in $_ the current object in the pipeline, right? And when I'm done doing all that, I'm going to just stop the chat. So let's run that. And let's see what it does. Let's see if back end is down. So there it is. So so my stuff is just passing through just that string into ChatGPT. And now I have a hello world in Python, hello world in Rust, hello world in Go, and a hello world in PowerShell. Now you folks can fact check me. I'm not going to run that, but I'm going to assume that's all correct. That's what it's like. Now I just said do hello world. I could say, I can kick it up a notch and use Fibonacci. I could ask it to do FizzBuzz, or I could start asking it to do even things like merge sorts. Like how would Donald Knuth, who actually invented some of these sorts back. So you can begin to go into different directions to ask it to write stuff. Now, this is a one shot. This is what they call a one-shot or a zero-shot prompt. I'm just asking it to do something and letting it figure everything out. As you get more complicated, you want to do things like few shot, which means you give it some examples and let it have something to go on so we can figure out what direction you're going in. Anyway, so that took like 12 seconds to do 4 hello world programs. Moving on. Let's convert some curl. So let's say, you know, sometimes I know I'm out there and I'm looking how to do some stuff and I find an answer from a Python or a Bash or a Z shell, and there's a curl thing and it's much more complicated than this, but this is not simple. So I'm going to create a string in PowerShell. I'm going to call it a prompt and I'm going to give it a little bit of direction. Hey, convert from curl to PowerShell. I don't want it to guess what this is. So I tell it to do that. I give it the curl. And now instead of using chat, I'm going to use GPT and I'm going to use an older model in GPT. And again, like I said earlier, it's like 2 to 6 months old, if that's old, but it is for AI space. Let's run that. And let's see what ChatGPT does. So in 2 seconds, it comes back and it says, oh, you want to do an invoke REST method. It figures out that I wanted to do a post from the curl, figures out, puts in the proper URI, handles the content type for application JSON, and it even takes the -d, which is the body in the invoke REST method. So again, if somebody knows how to use AI, I don't have to sit there and mess around with curl stuff. The boss can come over and say, hey, we got to convert all this curl stuff. You think you can do it? Yeah, it's going to take me a week. And then I'll sit there with GPT and I'll go to the beach on Tuesday and everybody else can. But I used to do that with PowerShell too. Oh yeah, that's going to take quite a while to get that done. And then everybody's sitting there with their C++ and C#, and I would just knock it out in PowerShell and come back on Monday and say, oh yeah, I was done. So anyway, what else can GPT do? So now I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to give it a piece of code in PowerShell, and I want it to explain it to me. So how often do you get a piece of code that you're looking at in PowerShell or any language, right? I'm demoing mostly PowerShell here, but this can be any language. It could be C++, it could be Java, it could be TypeScript, it can be Python. So I'm going to say, give it a little direction, explain this code, this PowerShell code. Here's a function, greet. It takes a parameter. I'm going to type it as string. It's called name. And then I want to do some interpolation. Hello, name. I'm going to pass that up to GPT, run it, and hopefully it'll explain it correctly. And this is, so it took 3 seconds. It figured out what I was asking, it figured out the code, and it said this is a PowerShell function called greet that takes a single parameter of type string. So that's pretty cool. If somebody asked me the question what this thing did, I would never tell that person, oh, that's been typed as a string. I would have said, yeah, it's just printing hello, whatever, hello world or hello John. The function simply prints out the string hello, followed by the string parameter that was passed. So I'm doing really simple stuff. Trust me, it can do far more complicated. Now, would I sit there and throw a 10,000 line PowerShell script at it? No, that's never going to happen. It's going to fall over. But if I took certain bits and pieces out of it, right, I could start saying, oh, what does this part mean? What does that part mean? Make some assumptions, then maybe give it, because you can have a conversation with it, you can start with like simple parts, and then the third part gets more complicated. ChatGPT will have a context and memory of what you were talking about, and then you can say, well, how does this all fit together? And it's amazing what it can come up with. Let's move on to regexes, because everybody loves regexes, which I don't understand. I hate regexes, but I know what they do. So English to regex. So write me a regex matching a URL. So somebody's over Googling. I just took a sip of coffee and their GPT came back from an English description what that is. Now I'll leave you folks to fact check that for me. It looks good to me. And you can get as complicated as you want. You can talk about grouping. You can talk about matches. You can talk about, you know, DFAs and NFAs, right? You can greedy matches and non-greedy matches. And because it's been trained on all of that wonderful mathematical computer stuff for decades, it knows more than we do. So the last thing I'm going to show in using a notebook is something called Notebook Copilot. So we're using PowerShell, we're using ChatGPT. I've integrated those two, right? And we're seeing that in a notebook. We'll see that in the console in a second. And so now there are pieces inside of a notebook that you can access programmatically because it's all written in .NET, or most of it's written, no, it's all written in .NET. So there's pieces that they've made available that you can then affect the environment of the notebook itself. So I wrote something called NBCopilot, which stands for Notebook Copilot. So let's take a look at what this does. We'll kick it off because this takes a little bit longer. Write a PowerShell core function. I just want the function, no explanation, do not show how to use it. That will show a date and time in timestamp form. So that went out to ChatGPT, pulled it, and then inserted a runnable cell. This is not a piece of text, right? This is not like something I can't run this REST method here, right? It's just, I would have to copy, create a cell, paste it in, do some stuff. NBCopilot will talk to GPT and create a runnable cell. Now I'm going to run it, but I didn't call it, which is fine. We'll add up another code cell. Here I can call date time. That's fine. And I can control enter, and it actually does it. So GPT figured out what I wanted, gave me a form of a timestamp, and now I'm going to iterate with it. Maybe I don't really want that kind of a timestamp. So now I'm in a conversation. So that conversation I've kept around, and I'm going to pass that back up with the next one. NBCopilot, add a param to handle, and amazingly, look at that, so it's even completing. So if I misspelled it, it would have known to correct the spelling and then do the right thing. So now I'm going to do the same thing, use that previous one, and notice it gave me another runnable piece of code, and it inserted the param correctly, right? So now I have a default, and if I wanted to run this, so this is how you can sit and use, this is just one way you can interact with it in terms of using a notebook. And now I'm going to put semicolons in there. And that worked really well. If I run this one, right, you got to remember to run your cells. And now it's got the new format. And we'll do one more. And I can say NBCopilot, insert command. I always get this wrong. Text base, comment based help, right? Things that we love to do. We always like to comment our code 5 weeks later. Well, now you can have Copilot do it for you. Let's see how long this takes and what it comes up with. 10 seconds. Is it down or is it running? Are my demos over? So this will take a little bit longer because it has to go out and figure out. And there you go. So now I've got comment-based help. So I started with a basic idea, right? Give me a function that does X. Give me a parameter so I can modify it. And now I want to put comment-based help. I can delete all these things, or I can just copy. I can run this, and hopefully it runs. So yep, so it's all correct. It's correct in terms of compilation, so to speak. And then I can test it and see if it actually works. Then I can copy, paste it, and put it in my code. And even though I use, so the idea here is not so much the get timestamp stuff. It's really, how do I interact with GPT to create a function, create a parameter set, and then actually do some documentation. Moving on. Any questions? Look at the example. Oh, Stephen, how are you? How did it know what context to use? That's the magic of my PowerShell module. Good question. How did it know what context to use? So when you, so back up here, that's a great question. How to know the context? So I have a bunch of functions, which we'll see coming up. One of them is chat. When I do chat, what I'm doing is I'm actually taking your prompt and I'm storing it in an array in memory. I don't want to tell you too much how the sausage is made because it's kind of boring. But I'm taking that, I'm storing it in an array, and then I'm actually I'm sending it off to ChatGPT. I'm taking the response from ChatGPT, I'm storing that in an array. So that's the context. And then as each call from there on in, right? Give me a parameter, that's part of it. The answer, the responses becomes part of the array, so on and so forth. And that's how these LLMs work in terms of maintaining context and memory. Then you have a limit, and the new ones that just came out, we used to have a limit of 8K. That's the old limit from like 3 weeks ago. And the new limits are 16K. So now you can send, if you think about, and those are tokens, it's not words. So you get more tokens in a string than you get text or words in it. So you get a little bit more. You pay per token, you pay per thousands of tokens up and down in terms of the request response. But that's how it maintains its context. And then there's all kinds of techniques where you can do chunking, and you can say, oh, I've hit my context. What do I have to lop some stuff off so I can have a better conversation? And that's what the PowerShell AI module kind of wraps and handles to a great degree. I have a colleague that is storing memory vector-based. Why is an array? Because I didn't want to use vector-based management with embeddings is different than what I'm doing here. You can use vector-based arrays, but that's really for a different technique where you are vectorizing, let's say, a set of PDFs. And instead of setting up all the PDFs to do some queries against it, you can then say, hey, somebody's looking for this information. Which PDFs have the best matches? Just take that text and then send it up to the ChatGPT. I hope that answers that question. I leave the # sign to do comments because I'll invariably forget what I need to do. There you go. Now you have a smart intern that can do it for you.
I think there was another question from Maximilian. Can I create a pester test for the function? I guess.
Wow, man. We're only 10 minutes into the demo and everybody wants to know the good stuff. The answer is yes. And I will detract for now, but you're missing out on other cool things when I do this stuff. But
we can maybe put it at the end if you let. I think
let's
go.
It came up now. Let's do it now.
Okay.
This is all good. This is excellent. Interactive, like the notebook. So see if I can. This is going to be great. Let's see if I can do a pester test. So I just created a PowerShell file. Let's say create. I'm going to make up some fictitious stuff, kind of like the way ChatGPT does. Create a pester boilerplate for get sales. So now, let's see if I can do. I'm going to give it a nudge. See what happens. Now, if you look on the bottom right, you see little things that was swirling. That's my Copilot. Okay. Now, if you see the gray, that's Copilot giving me a suggestion. So now we're using the same. We're using ChatGPT, but this is GitHub Copilot. That's a separate tool that you have to install. You have to get on a wait list. I think it's the newer ones are on a wait list. The older one's not, which is as good. This is the newest one. And you got to pay for this one. It's another $10 a month or whatever it's going to cost. And to be honest with you, I can't live without it. And if you're not using it, AI won't replace you. Somebody who does know how to use it will. So I just typed in describe. Let's do that again. And notice what it did. I'm going to hit tab to accept the entire suggestion. All right, that's a good beginning. So it says, it doesn't even know if get sales exists, but I'm going to assume that's what it looks like. And it thinks, okay, you're going to get a list of sales. This is going to be fun. Let me see if I can. Let me just open up another file. Give me a minute while I get to some good stuff. So here's what's really cool. So I just wrote just some of the basics. I'm going to get rid of this. And this is one of the cool things. By putting in notice I put the comment in on the top. Basically, I'm steering GPT. I'm steering Copilot what I want, right? I'm not just sitting there with a blank screen. I'm going to have a little bit of an idea what I want to do. Or you could be opening up a file of PowerShell or whatever programming language or Markdown. And the stuff that's there becomes the context that it's going to use to try to give you suggestions. So I'm going to say, okay, this returns a list of sales. And I'm going to make a block comment here. Okay, and I'm going to assume when I run my PowerShell get sales, I'm going to assume that that's what I'm going to get back at the console. So I'm just taking that. This is sometimes how I build my tests. I look at it, go, oh yeah, let me take what's my output? Let me write some tests around that data. But what's really cool about ChatGPT or Copilot is, yep, we get sales. We want to get it. I'm going to call it actual. That's the way I like to do it. And we might have to let's do an actual, go into the array. Okay, so it's already trying to say, okay, I'm going to make some guesses. Nah, that's not really what I want. Let's, this may not work today. So I just typed in 0 left angle bracket. And somehow it knows that region from the heading is a property name. And it looked at the first one and it knows it's west. How in goodness did it do that? Now notice it's also the wrong syntax. No problem. I'm going to correct it a little bit. And I'm going to, you know what? I want it to be exact, right? Go to the next one. Wow, look at that. So a little bit of a nudge, and now all of a sudden it knows the correct syntax. It knows I want to use exactly. It already knows that I'm on the first element, and it's 0-based array. That's pretty bizarre. And it knows state. Let's keep going. Units. I don't want that to be exact because that's 927, but figured out the correct one. Don't ask me how the magic happens. I have no clue. So, and there we have price. I just wrote my first partial unit test, and tell me I'm not going to be faster at unit testing my stuff than somebody else. So I can knock out my code, knock out my unit tests before anybody else writes their first function, in my opinion. Some people are better than that, but so now it's going to say, hey, you probably want to do number one. Notice it already knows the B exactly before it went back to B, because I said it was in my mind, I thought numeric, but it knows that, oh, maybe you want to just do it on text. I don't know. I'm going to get a little tricky on it. I'm going to go array slice, go to the last element. I'm going to try to confuse it. Figures out that it wants south. That's ridiculous. Now, Ryan, I like that you're laughing, because when I sit here at home quietly programming on a Saturday night drinking a beer, you just hear me laughing the whole time. It's like, what the hell is this thing doing? So
yep.
It picks up state. It's yes, it's off the hook. 712, and there I am. I'm done. So now I did boundary testing on my array coming out of my get sales, and I'm telling you, this is a simple example, but this technique works. And even if you saw getting the syntax wrong, notice it started with the 4-row syntax for pester, and then I corrected it, and it picked up the correct syntax going forward. All right, let me move on. Let's see. Does that answer the question? Does it do unit testing? And you know what? Sometimes I can actually do that, and it'll stir my coffee while I wait. But that's a different product. This is a G-rated presentation. Okay, so let's go to the command line. Let me close the rest of these out. Close the others, and no. And if you think this is cool, you definitely want to join me on Tuesday when I do the code interpreter deep dive. Even though it's going to be unscripted and I'm just going to basically improvise. GPT can't, but it always makes people happy, especially me, and it's hard to make mistakes. So at the command line, let's see if I can. Oh, that was a good thing to do. So if I do, so I have 3 commands basically in the module. Well, there's several, but the ones we're going to look at now, sorry, is GPT, which is alias to get GPT-3 completion. I have one for GPT-4, but it's a different model. The GPT completion, this version, is just a text, an in, text out response. The chat version is a message in, message out oriented type concept, so it's a different set of structures. We won't take a look at that today. We saw part of it with the NBCopilot, but we won't go any deeper. There's also, I have something called AI and Copilot, and there's a reason that I have those separated out. So let's take a look. We're going to play with AI. So I'm going to change to this module, this directory, and this is a, is that right? So that's what I have. And for folks who are familiar with I'm doing, that's a really cool noise, by the way. I have a lot of thoughts of what it might be, but I won't. Anyway, so if I do a git status, if you're familiar with git status at the command line, in here I just have 3 created files. It is a git repo, and it's just telling me that I have 3 untracked files, right? That's a lot of noise, right? I'm like, what does that really mean? I hate writing commit messages. I don't know if anybody else does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same git status, and then I'm going to pipe it. So the AI module, you can chain and you can pipe things to it. So I'm going to pipe the output from the git status, and then I'm going to say, write me a detailed commit message for these changes. So off it goes to GPT, and it figures out, okay, this is the initial files for the project, and it puts down a list. I could ask it to go a little deeper. I can expand on that's a simple prompt that I did. It's a low effort prompt, but if you could actually spell it out even further, and again, you can see that you can wrap this in yet another function to always do your initial commit messages in a certain way. And you don't have to worry about what is it, where is it, how do I put proper comments. Let's see, I leave to do comments. I'm behind in the messages. Should I look at anything good to read yet, Heiko, or we continue?
I would say we continue, and then we.
Okay, then take some stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the AI module. That's the AI function. Let's do a copy. That doesn't help. So there's something else I have in here, and it's called Enable-AI shortcut. And there's also a disable AI shortcut. And what does that mean? So I can do something like, what is my IP address? I can type it as a comment at the command line. I can hit Control-Shift-G, right? So that interacts with PS line. And there you have it. It injects what the command thinks I want to run. Now I'm going to press enter. I'm going to get an error, but that's okay, right? And it gets I hope I'm not showing anything I shouldn't be, but that's the IP address. And the reason it errors is because the first thing is just it's not a comment, right? I can improve my prompt here and say, you know, make any kind of text as a PowerShell comment, or I can go back into the code that actually is behind the AI shortcut, and I can improve the prompt there to make that better. So you can start asking all kinds of strange questions, or strange. You can ask whatever you like. What else did I have? Let's see. I don't think we're going to leave it at that. So basically, you can take the output from any other command line product, like exe or whatever you're running, or another PowerShell script, and you can pipe it to AI and give it a string, which is the prompt around the information you're passing, and you can get ChatGPT to respond to it. A lot easier than sitting there and maybe copying and pasting to and from the web page, or what you really can't even get into in Copilot to a certain degree. So let's take a look. I have something called Copilot. Use PowerShell, list PowerPoint files in this directory, which I don't think I have any, but that doesn't matter. So this is just passing up the prompt. And what it does is when it comes back with code, okay, I number the lines of code that come out. I syntax highlight it, and then I give you a bunch of choices. Yes, you can run it. You can have it explain what that is. You can copy it to the clipboard. You can output it to VSCode. So we'll run it, and I don't think I have any PowerPoint files in yes, I do. And there we go. So it knew when I said PowerPoint, it translated PPT, and we were good to go. Okay, it also knew to use get child item. It didn't use the alias, so that's pretty good as well. Let's run that one more time. You can then I could be new to PowerShell, or I'm doing something more complicated in listing files. I can press E, and it'll take that code. I'll take that code and I'll pass it back up, and I'll say, explain what this code is doing. And it comes back. This command will search the current directory, all subdirectories for files that have a name that starts. Well, that's not correct. That starts with PPTX. It ends with it. Oh. And it uses the recurse, does it? No, it does not. So there we are. So there's our first hallucination of the day. So it's close, but not exact. And I would blame me because I don't really have I'm only sending back this simple text. That's a minimal effort prompts, and things can be crazy. So you can actually need to upgrade your capabilities by improving that prompt. Okay, what else we got? So we enabled that. So another thing you can do, and you can use AI or GPT or the Copilot, well, AI or GPT for this. I'm going to ask, all right, tell me the first 5 US presidents. And I'm just going to put in here terms, VP for vice president, and party. Right quotes. Let's see what it comes back with. And it comes back with, I'll let somebody fact check that. Looks pretty close. But here's a really cool trick that you can do pretty much on any prompt. As a markdown table. Now I'm doing the same prompt as a markdown table. Let's see what it does. Hopefully it won't hallucinate. And there we go. Now in the module, I also have something called convert from GPT markdown table. Now you can see I've already run like 3 different commands. It's pretty snappy, right? Now I've got it back as a PowerShell objects. And of course, nothing's complete in my demos unless I can export it to Excel. Now that I have it in object form, right? So I can get the presidents, get a bunch of information, markdown table, convert it, and now I've got it inside of Excel. Now, So you can, all those things are separate functions, so you can mix and match and put those things together. That's out there ready to go. I'll show more of that in a minute. All right, any questions? Super duper lazy option. Git commit, there you go. Oh my goodness, you go right for the commit. You go just push it right in. Well, good luck, dude. Just hopefully it doesn't confabulate and say, oh, I'm going to check that in with a GitHub action that formats your entire repo. So, but I don't think it would do that. But you never know. But it could be your prompt. Yes, this thing is pretty wacky. Who knew you could use? Who knew you would use Excel? There's a few people here that know that. So let's now. So now we've seen it inside of a notebook, like a little bit of a, I wouldn't call it data science, but you can interact and save your results, and it's a good way to iterate, capture what you're doing. Figure out what next steps are, come back to it tomorrow or a week, pass it along to your friends, family, coworkers, and they can actually run the same set of queries to get a feel of what's going on and seeing what the output results should be. Let's try and play it in some scripts. This is some cool stuff, I think. So here, let me get rid of this. And so let's say, okay, so I have a file, and I'm calling it feedback CSV, and the HR people are like, hey, we've got this all this feedback, we want to do something with it. Okay, great. So there's your property name, right? Employee feedback, and then here's 7 potential pieces of feedback, right? My boss is great, bathrooms are dirty, right? And let's go into the enrich feedback from CSV. So this should be familiar to most. I'm just going to import that CSV file, right? And I'm going to loop through each record in the data, little progress bar. Then here comes some cool magic. So I'm going to create a new object, and I'm going to, first thing I'm doing is just plunk in the feedback. And then I have these 3 properties: about, sentiment, response, and I'm calling script blocks. You can call functions, you can do whatever way you're comfortable with. I did this for hopefully ease of understandability in a demo. So here's the about feedback script block, right? It takes a parameter, feedback, and then it takes a bunch of text, and it says summarize the feedback using max 4 words. I use replacement, plunk that line of feedback in there, and then I tell the model or GPT where I want the about. Do the same thing for sentiment, a little bit different steering, decide whether it's positive, neutral, or negative. And then the last one I'm doing is you're an HR expert and need to respond to the feedback in a sentence. So they're basically all 3 the same. Take that one piece of that one line of code or one line of feedback. We're going to run it through, create an object for each one with the about, sentiment, and response. And then at the end, we collect it. And of course, we go to Excel. So there's my little write progress. Compensation is fair. Everybody can see that. I can make it bigger. Bathrooms are always dirty. My boss is great. And I recently learned I get paid half of what my coworkers do. Oh, and it goes to Excel. And now we send that to HR and we look like geniuses. Okay. So GPT just did everything from column B for column B, C, and D. Now, if you want to go back and get more kinds of things like that, create another script block, create another function that calls GPT with the prompt that you want, and you pass in the piece of text. So I recently learned I get paid half. Summarize it as unequal pay. It's negative, and HR will respond with, we take pay equity very seriously and will investigate this discrepancy to ensure fairness. Mind-boggling. Sorry, that's just crazy. Another example. Okay, that's cool stuff. I think there were a couple of more of these. Yeah. Oh, wow. They're almost all Excel. Sorry. So here's another one. I just recently put this together. We're not going to go through how the sausage is made, really, but it's generally the same idea. Prompt, here's some information. Wrap the prompt in some more details, and then, of course, come back and drop it in Excel. So invoke an Excel template, right? So I have no templates in the invoke template. Really all it's doing is just wrapping GPT that I have in PowerShell. So top 10 cats include 5 details about it. So I want GPT to tell me about the top 10 cats. Sorry, this is not a programming concept. So, but what you can see is that this can also be about your code. It can be about function names. You can read files. You can get all your functions out of whatever system that you're working with and do the similar thing. And it comes back and tells me 10 breeds where they came from, their size, coat length, and lifespan. I can do the same thing with top 10 names, include 5 details about it. And I'll just skip that and go to, let's say somebody says, hey, I want to create a conference. Since everybody went to PSConfEU, they could have used this. And this one is like, give me an agenda for a one-day sales kickoff event with session and description, the session descriptions and status, right? That's kind of like, what would you do? What do you need to have inside of an agenda, right? If you're going to do something like that. Well, let's ask ChatGPT. Now, this is a simple, minimal prompt. And if you get more, if you explain more to the model, you'll get more out of it. For those who may not be familiar, ImportExcel, thank you. Use it daily. Excellent. I use it daily as well, just for myself. So there you go. So with a simple agenda for a one-day sales kickoff, it gave me a 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. deal, tells me some potential sessions, descriptions, and it shows me some status. Now, I may not like things like confirmed and pending, so I can go back into my prompt if I wanted to, and I can say, these are the 5 status I want. And you could make that prompt as big as you want, right? To define this, and this. If you wanted to come up with, you didn't know how to come up with a template for yourself. You don't have to download anything from other sites. You don't have to sit there and scrape Google. You don't have to look on Stack Overflow. How are we doing on time?
Looks good.
All right.
Yeah, we still have to.
All right. So I'm going to do, this one is really slick. It's something I've been looking at for a while, and it's coming together, and this looks like it's at a good place. So I have a chat CSV. So you can maybe imagine what that is, right? I'm going to talk to my CSV data via GPT. Yeah, let's do it at the command line. Let's see if I can change directory to the right place. Awesome. So there's a bunch of functions. I'm still cleaning this up to make it as concise as possible. But it is currently all in working order. And that's kind of how I work. First I make it work, and then I make it clean. So here's my data, right? It's probably not real. So I basically have order data, and I have information about each order, you know, email, street, city, zip, date, how much was paid, what kind of a package it was, delivery fees, taxes, all that kind of good stuff, right? So in here, we can do it, and we'll import my CSV model, and then I'll do a get schema. What does that do? So if you look, right, so all the properties at the top, first line is a property. So that's a simple 2-line, 3-line PowerShell function where I grab the data, look at the first row, and you can probably hear the horns blowing. Welcome to New York. So there's and then I pull out the column names, and I put this all into a JSON object, and I take the first, part of the file, and I make that the table name. So it looks like it's doing some SQL stuff. Put it into JSON. ChatGPT loves JSON because it's structured information. So what can I do with that? Good question. Go to my demo. So we did the get schema. So let's say I have a thing called Chat CSV. Show the different statuses. Now what I'm doing here is I'm cracking open the file, whatever CSV you pass me in. I pass up the schema, and I give it a steering prompt and says, you're an expert in PowerShell, you understand CSV data, and I want a PowerShell program coming out of this that does this, this, and this. Don't show me any explanations or usages or examples. So it comes back and it says, oh, you want to know about the statuses? Okay, so I'm going to read the data, line 1, standard import CSV, and select the property status unique. Let's run that. So this is almost like a confirmation process. So that comes back and it shows me, so I didn't pass my data from CSV up. I just passed the schema, right? And ChatGPT is giving me back so far correct PowerShell code. Let's move on. Let's say I wanted to show how many orders by state. Now, as this is going, you can imagine, well, what else has schemas in the world that we work in? We'll get to that in a second. So it's always going to do line 1 pretty much on target. And now it's going to say, oh, you want to know how many orders by state? Well, I'm going to group it by state, and then I'm just going to select okay, so that's interesting information. Let's kick it up a notch. And we see that. So show me how many orders by state, but just give me the top 5. There's no top 5 in PowerShell. There is in OData. And it knows how to sort property by descending, and it selects the first 5. Yeah, that took me a couple of years to figure that out back in the day, right? Like what this, so you can give this to somebody and you can go, just ask these kind of questions and make sure you use unit tests, blah, 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 and then show me the code afterwards with the unit tests and we'll work through and see if we want to check that in. So I just said top 5. Let's change that to best. Let me spell it out. 5 performers. I have no idea what's coming back. It might come back with like, oh good, somebody else lives near New York City. So it does the same thing. This is what they call NLP, natural language processing, and I'm doing it over my data in a CSV file. And it comes back with the same answer. So I'm not constricting my users to, okay, you have to ask the question exactly like this with the words in this proper order. I'm just letting ChatGPT figure all that out. This is using the ChatGPT 4 stuff, which is a little more expensive. It's a little slower, but it's much more accurate. And if you learn how to do prompting, where it's actually prompting with a system message, which is the steerability of it, you can get these kind of results. And that takes a bit of practice. Let's do one more. Let's see. Let's try this one. Let's say I want to see how many orders per year and month. I don't want to see by month. Break it down by year and month. Let's see what it does. The last one that came up when I was doing this yesterday was like, so that's pretty slick. How many people know you can do a group object property and then do a parsing of the date like that? And that becomes what it works on. There you go. Everybody, Alexander, what do you got? I bet you Alexander knew this. This one was like, when I started putting it together, I was like, oh, that's a really interesting way to use it. I would have like used code to break it out and then use it and then added it as a property and then did the group object. So, and then again, I can do this, did the count correct. And then I can say lower 5. So now I can just get 5 and I can find the worst performers. I could use the word worst performers, worst 5 performers or worst 10. So because it's a natural language model, right? So now I know the 5 lower performing months, and that may or may not be correct depending on how many, I guess, oh no, it's sorting all by date. So there you have it. Now, what else has schemas? SQL databases. Maybe that example is coming soon. What else has schemas? Excel files. Hard to believe. So you can think of an Excel file. Every sheet is a table, right? And if the data is tabular, right? So I can crack open the Excel spreadsheet, grab each sheet. That becomes the table name. I can grab the first row of each one. And I now have the property names, which are the column names. Now I can feed in a bunch of different spreadsheets, whether they're in one. I can have a single XLSX with 5 sheets, or I can have a single XLSX with just 1 sheet. I can pass both those schemas in, and then I can ask questions. And because I can steer the model, I can say, and here's how you work with ImportExcel and different functions you need to crack it open, do this, then the rest just do with PowerShell. It just opens the doors in a crazy, crazy way. Any questions? Can AI do this with OpenAI API key like one I can use with generic V extension? I have not used the Genie extension, Genie AI VSC. If it's working with OpenAI, it should be the exact same key is my assumption. If it doesn't, find me on Twitter. I'm at D as in Doug, Finke. I do most of my communication there. When I announce my live streams, when I do meetups, when I do videos about I have a whole playlist of 20+ videos on all different ways you can use this. More are coming. If this doesn't work for you, find me. And thank you, Heiko. And find me, and I'm happy we can work through those things. Or you can just go to the repo. I have a discussion list open. People ask questions on that, as well as file issues, like these kinds of things. Anyway, any other questions or things that we didn't answer yet? Thank you. There's the YouTube channel. Are you going to make your demos public? Yes. A lot of these demos are public. These ones that you just saw, I've been working on for a bit, and they're almost ready for public consumption. Because there's definitely banana peels you can slip on. So I just want to tighten that up a little bit, make sure that it works well out of the box. Thank you, Stephen. Doug is super helpful. Oh, yeah, thank you. PowerShell on GitHub. Yep, if you want to go, I have a list of a bunch of videos there. If you click on those, you'll find the videos, you'll find the playlists. This technology is mind-blowing. Absolutely spend 20 bucks a month. It's easily cancelable. So if you set it up for a month or 2 months, you can they don't hide how to cancel it. It seems to me somewhat similar to ChatGPT interpreter, but outside the OpenAI. Good point. It's not please join on Tuesday. This is not the interpreter. The interpreter is amazing. The interpreter, for example, can actually run this. And let's say there was a syntax error, or let's say it would actually try to run it against the CSV itself in ChatGPT. If there was an error with the data or there was an error in the syntax, it would detect the error and then try to correct it and then run it again. That is insane. So this ChatGPT is really the humble beginnings of artificial general intelligence. And if you're not paying for it, you're going to be further and further behind, because prompting is not like Googling. This is a whole different animal, and learning how to, turn the knobs and dials on this thing is different and very important. And as we saw at the beginning, Ryan and I are laughing at the output, like, oh my God, how did it know how to do that? Like, how did it know how to do the pester tests? That's just insane. And the cool thing is, if I was in TypeScript, it would know Jest. If I was in C#, it would know NUnit. If I was in other languages, Go, it would know how to put tests around Go and Rust. So yeah, and if you're somebody that likes to learn, you can walk up to this thing and say, hey, how do I do a hello world in TypeScript? Okay, how do I do this? How do I do talk to an HTTP endpoint? And you can learn a new language without knowing anything about it. You're just asking your common sense questions. There are PhD professors out of Wharton that don't know programming, and they are testing this stuff, and they're going, I'm a Python coder, because they know what questions they know what they're trying to ask, and GPT begins to follow the logical order of thinking, because it has the entire corpus of Python that it's been trained on. Apart from PS, what are the other languages it can do? Search processing. It can do SQL. Yep, I don't have the SQL example here, but absolutely. Not only does it do SQL, it does T-SQL. Anything that's out there in the documentation and public domain, it can do. Anything.
I think we have Ian raising the hands. Maybe if you have a questions, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes. Yes, a quick question. Doug, what you showed on VSC, where you had the quick comment and then it populated the code. Can that be done with an API key alone, or does one need the entire subscription?
Good question. So this piece here, where I'm actually doing a comment inside of Visual Studio Code with the extension, you don't need an API key. You need to buy GitHub Copilot. So GitHub Copilot is a completely separate subscription, and then you have access to everything. And just as a little teaser, you even get GitHub Copilot Chat, which I'm not going to go through. So,
okay. Because the API key I found to be more like a serverless, more cost-efficient consumption, versus, because with the API key, I saw that I don't even consume more than less than $1 in a month versus.
Yeah, well, in the GitHub Copilot, it's not a pay as you go. I don't believe it costs you $10 a month whether you make 1 query or 1,000 queries or more.
Right.
So it's basically they'll pay if you want to use it heavily. They'll pay for the rest. The API stuff, but you can't wrap Copilot in a script, right? You can't wrap this via. So the API key is super cheap, and it's not the API key that's cheap. It's the REST API model. It's like 1,000 tokens is like 0.0003 cents for every 1,000 tokens. So yeah, it's so cost effective. So at the end of the day, you probably would spend $30 a month for the GitHub Copilot, which is tuned differently for Visual Studio Code as compared to ChatGPT on the web, which is $20 a month. So for $30 a month, and then whatever else you want to pay if you want to do REST API, so let's say $35 a month, you get access to all these environments that are all tuned differently, so you can really learn to do what prompting is and how these things are tuned, and then figure out which one you want to use the most. Yeah, so no, the API key is definitely cheaper, but you have to craft the prompts. These guys are doing GPT's magic. GitHub Copilot is magic plus plus. So I'm still trying to find out and talking to people inside of Microsoft. I want to talk to that team, but it seems like they're not allowed to talk to anybody. So I'm like, I want to know how you do your prompts. I want to know how you like you can't, it's very hard to do prompt injection with this thing. I want to know how they do the moderation, how they moderate up and down, but I can't get answers yet. But yeah, this is a whole different level of working with stuff. So, but don't miss out.
Okay. Yeah,
sorry, I'll go on and on and on. I've got the
Yeah,
microphone.
and the Copilot X. So I was a little confused with, should I get the Copilot X license with
Of course.
with the
Of course. Don't be behind. This is Copilot X here. So you can do things like this, like, I don't know, yeah, let's see, FizzBuzz. I'm just gonna, I don't know if this is gonna work. FizzBuzz, yeah, I might have to, so I'm just gonna do a simple one. FizzBuzz in PowerShell. So this is ChatGPT web, but it's inside of Copilot. Let's see, maybe a little slow because it uses a different back end, but it uses the same models as the ChatGPT web. But they were having some issues. Come on, FizzBuzz. Don't make me look bad. So Heiko, I'm gonna have to pare this down to do for Friday.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So
I'll just show like 3 things and then we'll be done. Okay, here we go. And I'm out. So now I can copy this to the clipboard, or I can insert it at the cursor, or I can create it in a new file. And this is chat. You don't get this in the Copilot that there is today. This is the Copilot chat, Copilot X, and the chat window. So, and that's a little bit different than putting a comment at the top of your stuff. Plus, if you're opening up your own PowerShell files, right, you can keep the tabs open. If you open up the PowerShell file you're working on, it'll use the files that are open in the tabs as well as the one that's in there. Plus, with any comments you start to give it to steer it, to use it as the context to provide you a solution. So don't miss out. Buy the license. AI won't replace you, but somebody that knows how to use it, like me, I can do your job on a weekend. And what's really cool about this is that as you learn how the models work, as you learn how the prompting works, just like with anything else we've learned over time, you begin to go, oh, if I structure my code this way, I can write easier pester tests. Well, if I structure my code certain ways, GitHub Copilot can actually answer my questions better, faster, and deeper. So it's just a whole mindset that you begin to adopt and make yourself better and better and better. Hope that answers the question. You're welcome.
Yeah, I think there's still some question about the Copilot, the VS Code extension, and your module. I think in regards to what is necessary for, or what would be use cases for what. I think.
Okay. So
also,
so the good thing about, the thing about Copilot, GitHub Copilot is, as you're typing, it's actually dropping things inside of your. You can actually drop things into your code. I can sit here and I can do Control-I, which is another Copilot piece. I can say, refactor this into a function. I can say, do the comment-based help. As I'm typing, it's going to give me suggestions as I type in my code. My module lets you work. If you can't get Git status here, right? So you can't do a Git status inside of Copilot and have it respond with how to do that. You can't ask it questions about Git in that way. In addition, my stuff, you can actually then take the PowerShell AI, and as I showed you with the feedback module, asking about cats, asking about CSV, that's a programmatic scripting bot over what you're doing. You can't create a bot from the GitHub Copilot. It's designed to be inside of Visual Studio Code, and that's it, which is amazing. So, you can actually then, I don't think it knows about it. It knows about my PowerShell AI module. So the interesting thing is you can start asking questions like, well, how would I use PowerShell AI to wrap this as a chat bot, right? And it'll give you that, and then it'll show you. It'll even tell you to download, how to do the, install module, how to do the import, and you're off to the races. And it knows the different functions. And then so the Copilot can generate that, and then you have a script that you can run inside of a GitHub action, an Azure function, so on and so forth. And the game just goes on from there. So I hope that answers it. Only for the US market. Somebody's asking about, oh, only US market or worldwide. I guess that's what the licenses are. Some embargoes maybe. Yeah, I don't know enough about those things. Yeah, I don't know enough about the licensing, where it can. And I know that Italy banned ChatGPT for like a month or so. So until they got certain, they pressured OpenAI to do some things. So I'm not sure what the issue is, region to region, country to country. So this
It's
is all
definitely
based
working
on,
here in Europe. I use Copilot Chat in Visual Studio Code. Mind's blown. I love it.
this stuff is next level. And I know it's PG, but holy shit, this thing's amazing. Don't walk, run to get it. Don't be left behind. I'm telling you right now, I feel like I work for OpenAI and I'm making money, but I'm not. That this is we're only in July. We haven't even talked about function calling. We haven't even talked about the code interpreter. That stuff is next level above this. Okay. So what you saw here today, what you'll see on Tuesday will really blow your mind. In addition, we're only in July. These guys are not stopping. They're tweaking the user experience. They're tweaking the models. They're providing more capability. You don't want to be sitting in like November or early next year when GPT-5 is coming out and going, what's a prompt? No, you don't want to be there. You want to be, and you'll look good. You'll do better. And just like when Jeffrey Snover used to say things like, yeah, PowerShell can give you a nice raise. Knowing this stuff and being able to get your job done and get it done accurately with unit tests that you didn't write with help, you look like a master player.
Yeah. So I think you did a good job, because you even convinced Guy to go for ChatGPT now. So I think mission accomplished.
Well,
absolutely. This is awesome. Thank you, Doug. You saw my meme joke about the machine gun salesman, because that was me. Through and through, yeah. I'm too busy to look at this ChatGPT stuff. I'm too busy. Obviously, it's going to help me.
I got to be honest, Guy. When I see you do your tweets and you talk about stuff, I sit there and I copy your question and I put it in ChatGPT, and then I respond to you. And I'm like, yeah, let me just nudge him a little bit. But really, in my mind,
I've noticed that, and yeah, apologies for being stubborn.
No. Apology. I mean, I'm a pain in the ass, so my apologies for doing that. But I only do it with people that I think are willing to move the needle. So otherwise, I wouldn't do it. There are people I've done that with, and they get really, really angry. Thank you for not getting angry.
No, thank you for persevering, shall we say? Because I mean, I've just actually signed up and done a couple of queries already, and it's like, oh, that's how you do it. Yes, an IIS Metabase one that I was struggling with, and it's like, yeah, you're smart. Well, that's it. Too smart. Let's not go down that avenue. No, but that is useful and worth paying for.
I definitely apply human characteristics to this thing. Sometimes when I got Copilot X and I started using it, I swear I was like, this thing is reading my mind. Like, how does it? It's like figuring. I'm telling it 3 words and it's already figuring out function calls and implementation. How is this even possible? But yeah, so I'll be looking forward to your tweets, and then we can battle the better. We can have ChatGPT yours talk to mine, and then we can see what comes out.
I think you're gonna mainly use it for that jokes, Maggie.
No comment.
Use case.
That's a great point, Heiko. But one thing that it's really interesting, one of the pieces that it knows jokes, like you can put in certain jokes and AI knows about it, but it's not good at generating them. You can ask about a specific.
So it's good to have people like Guy and Stephen, to do the real stuff. That's great. I think there's one interesting question.
Yeah.
What ChatGPT training path do you recommend? Is it just starting with a question, just doing it? What do you think?
That's a great question.
Is there a Pluralsight course from you already?
Nope. I've been talking to Pluralsight. They want me to do some articles for them, and I think they have one they have one class. I think Lars Klint did it. He has like a 30-minute, but he just kind of like does an overview. I'm not sure. I didn't see it. Yeah.
I watched it.
But that's who asked that question, please.
ChatGPT write it anyway.
RG is
oh, well, that's true. It's so what you want to do is you want to learn. So what you want to start, you want to start asking ChatGPT what resources do I need to learn prompt engineering? Okay. So learning how to prompt is fundamental. And I can tell you, so people at Microsoft had asked me, like, Doug, how would you do prompting? Do I really have to, it's not about programming? I'm like, pretty much all the experts I've been following for the last couple of years that they're big in this space, they say computer science people, math people, leave that shit at the door. This is all about rhetoric. This is all right. That's why this thing is so good at legal ease. It understands the language that humans have created for thousands of years. So learning how to, what word do you use in what part? Like, it's not like a keyword search. Like, do I want to, I've had 2 different responses by putting a comma before and the word and after, or not putting a comma in, and I get 2 different responses. So people might go, oh my God, that's ridiculous. You can never use it. No, you need to figure it out. You need to learn how to debug it. You need to learn what works. You need how to constrain your stuff. And they're coming up with new ways. You can actually ask ChatGPT. You say, hey, here's my prompt, improve my prompt. Okay. So this thing is, you got to get used to it. Start saying, what question? I can ask this thing anything. And we're just talking about programming here. This thing works in medical. It works in lawyers are using it. It works in, people come in and they at customer service sites, they pass this stuff through GPT. I just saw a thing from KPMG. They're investing like $300 million next quarter and the following quarter. They just partnered heavily again with Microsoft to like outfit their entire process in the auditing space and the taxation space. This thing, we don't know what it can do yet. So that's the point. You got it. Just like with PowerShell. Well, I can do a DIR. Yeah. Okay. So how do you pipe stuff? What's an object? How do you pass it around? How do I do an evoke rest method? Can I work on another machine? All these types, like, you have to get acclimated and get exposed to it. It is a Coursera MOOC. Which one? Yes, there are a couple of ones. Now that you said that, it reminds me. Andrew Ng, ANDREU space NG. I think he does deep learning. He has 2 courses out where he partnered with the top people. Her name is Isafora something or other. She's one of the top people at OpenAI, and they did a course on prompt engineering. Will blow your mind. I ported their examples from Python using my library to do it. I'm going to release those soon. You can do amazing. What they go through, like, how do you do it? How do you iterate? How do you constrain it? So deep AI, I think it's called deep learning AI. Yep. So there you go. Hey, Merlin from Belgium. Not Copilot. Yeah, and the thing is that if you learn prompting, if you learn how to do prompting, it doesn't matter whether you're on ChatGPT Web, on the old version, the new version, or in Copilot, or in using my stuff, or using people have done this with PowerShell. They have PHP modules that do similar things. Every language, because basically OpenAI has democratized access to this thing. So no matter where you go, it doesn't matter the tool that you're sitting on, prompting is the fundamental piece that you want to know. That gets you the information. That's the knobs and dials. Yep, Andrew Ng, that's it. Andrew Ng is amazing in the machine learning space. He's early on recognized ChatGPT, and he partnered with OpenAI. Amazing stuff, and I think it's still free. So jump on that.
Cool.
And yes,
cool
please
stuff.
get on my repo and join the discussions. Get on Twitter. Let's chat about this stuff. The more people that know, the more people that have ideas, and your experiences are absolutely beneficial for everybody. Thank you.
Absolutely. Very cool stuff. So I think no more questions at this point.
Well, I just got to respond to Merlin. IntelliSense. What are you talking about? That's a good analogy, but my goodness, that we're going
Next
back.
level.
IntelliSense and snippets. Their history. Anyway, that's all fun. Cool. Thank you. I'm gonna go get a beer.
Cool stuff. So thanks a lot, Doug. That was really a wild ride. Very, very cool stuff. Thanks a lot for joining us today. And we had a lot of people in here, which is great. A lot of questions, a lot of interaction. I love it. Really cool.
Yeah, thanks
So
very much for taking the time to join us. It's a really exciting space, and you really have spent the time to delve in there and show us what is possible. And I think you've really opened the eyes of a lot of people just by having those ideas. So yeah, it's amazing.
Cool. Thank you. Happy to do it. Happy to do more. I would love to stay and listen to about the PSConf, especially about Bruce Payette's braid language, which also I'm playing with. ChatGPT doesn't know about it yet, but that's because I haven't imported his entire library yet. But once I import his library into GPT, it'll be done.
Yeah.
All right, I'll leave you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
Again, thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Take care, everybody.
Bye, Doug. Yeah. So there was one question. It's recorded, so we're gonna upload the whole video in a couple of days. So that was really amazing, I think. So yeah. So the next topic we wanted to talk, if you want to stay, is get some little review of the PSConfEU. Ooh, all right. Okay, I got the mug. So
I was using this morning. Now I'm on to the other thing from Prague. So
all right, that's a nice souvenir. Yeah. So I think so for everyone who went there, like Emrys, of course. If you would like to, let people know who haven't been there what the experience was, and so maybe seeing people who haven't been at PSConf this year, maybe they will join next year. So maybe Ryan, what was your experience?
First off, I'd like to say a big shout out to Emrys for being a first-time speaker there. He did a great job, and it's great to see somebody that I've been a fellow attendee with in previous years actually find the courage to step up and speak. So good stuff, Emrys. Yeah, and that plays right along with what my feelings are about PSConf, PSConfEU. The community is amazing. The people there, you start feeling like you're in a family. You go to a conference, and yeah, by the end of it, you're wore out. You've took in so much more knowledge. Maybe you've had too many beers, but when you're leaving, you actually feel a little bit sad. You're leaving friends and family that you're like, oh, it's gonna be a while till I see them again, and it's just how amazing that community is.
Absolutely. Just a quick, because somebody asked, if we have to stop the recording. So if we want to discuss without being recorded, we can do this. We can stop it. Is that if you say, okay, we want to have this in the recording as well, then it would be okay for me too, because I think it's an interesting experience when we talk about what we experience at PSConf. So if someone has an issue with that, I think maybe just tell us, but otherwise I would just keep rolling the recording, if that's okay.
Sounds good. So yeah, but on top of the people, I mean, that's always my favorite part of that conference. But there's also always a wide range of different types of sessions, from things that scratch the surface to things that go so deep that I'm scratching my head. And just trying to understand what they're talking about. So there's something there for everybody. And, it's sometimes it's ones you didn't even expect. Alexander did a session, something like quick and dirty PowerShell tips. And I saw a couple things in there that just really are going to have an impact on my daily work, because they're just little things about working with the graph that I didn't think about, different ways I can do filters, or understanding why I put, a consistency level eventual, just little things like this that all of a sudden put some light in the darkness for me. And I'm really glad we have people like that share, and I'm, happy I could attend and get that knowledge. So anybody that hasn't been, I definitely encourage you to give it a try once. Just do know if you go once, you're going to want to go again. So be warned.
That's well said. And actually, I think they did a show of hands in the keynote, where asking about who have been attending previously or who have been first timers. And altogether, I think about 220 attendees, something around that. And I think about 80 were there the first time. So it looks like there are new people coming into the PowerShell community, which I think is really great, really awesome. So you can see it's a vital community and great people. Yeah, absolutely. So I have to totally agree with what you said. And it was really meeting people like Jeff Hicks and Bruce Payet in person, being able to talk to these guys and brother and all the other great people. And Alexander, it was really well organized, the content. And by the way, the content is available already, I think, at least most of the sessions on YouTube. So we can share maybe the link. So to just, let's say, digest the content, you can just go to YouTube. But this is, of course, not the same thing as having all the discussions during the sessions, meeting the people in the social events, which I think is also a great part of being in such a conference. Yeah, as we mentioned Emrys already, do you want to say a few words about what your experience was?
Of course I can. Basically, I have to agree with Ryan. I've been attending PSConf since, I don't know, 2019. It's always been a great experience. It's been fun meeting the people again year after year. I see Björn is here, Achim's here, people I meet there every year. This year, of course, for me personally, it was special because I was a first-time speaker. So if you want to check out my sessions, go to YouTube and have a look at them. I didn't get to see so many talks this year because I've just had different things to do as a speaker. But I'm definitely going to be watching a couple of talks or a couple of recordings of talks because they're always great. And yeah, I can just encourage people to go there, join the family, get to know people, get to know Jeff Hicks and April and Jaap and Matthias and everyone who's there.
Yeah, and the PowerShell team. And so I think you also have been part of this on-ramping program, right? Or mentoring program. So before you started to prepare, right?
Last year they offered this mentoring program. So basically the team organizing the PSConf has got this mentoring program. So if you're interested in speaking, you can sign up and there are a few meetings and then they will describe the whole process of writing an abstract, what you can expect and how to start preparing your talks. And if you got any questions or insecure about the way you're prepping for your talks going, you can just ask them any questions and they're there and they're helpful and very supportive. And they will be offering this program again this year. So if everyone feels confident and got a topic, should just take part and maybe you'll be a speaker next year.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, cool stuff. So that would be great. And I'm sure many people have ideas about things that they talk about, and then questions come up. Oh, the people will already know about it and all that stuff. And I think being in this talking with people who already did some sessions there, I think it's really helpful. So if somebody else wants to comment, or somebody suggested that we can at one point just stop the recording and then we are just talking about it without being recorded. So if that's maybe the time to do that, then I will do that. So maybe that's then a more informal conversation afterwards. Ryan, what do you think? Should we do that?
Sounds good.
Maybe before we do that, just maybe to finish up to like, okay, what happens next? I would just show one more slide. And I think we didn't even talk about it, Ryan, yet, but I think we're going to have another session in September, right? So that's kind of the plan.
Exactly.
So let's see. Let me just bring up this little slide here. So the things that are happening in the community. So one thing is, as Gael, one of the main organizer, we're going to have a chat I'm gonna have a chat with him with Marcus end of July in one of our Ask Me Anything sessions, so you can join there. We plan for September, I think, for the next session, and then some news came out just, I think, a few days ago. I think, at least that's why I saw it just last week, that the guys in Hanover, they organize a PowerShell Saturday, a in-person event on September the 16th. It's already on their meetup page, so that might be a thing you want to join if you're in Germany. And talking about PSConfEU, there will be, just like last year, there will be a little online, they call it the PSConf Minicon, and that will take place in October, on October 24th in the afternoon. And I heard from people who joined last year, I couldn't, unfortunately, but it was a lot of fun because it's kind of a virtual world where you can also game and play. So I think that's again, something that is, as a follow-up, as Ryan said, you're leaving PSConf, you're getting sad, you're leaving the family, but this is kind of a little online come together, which I think is cool, and it's for free, so everybody can join. So that's what I saw. Maybe there are other things that are happening I haven't seen. If there's anything else, put it into the chat, let us know. But that would be, I would say, the end of the official stuff, so to speak. So again, thanks everybody for joining the session. Doug's session, I think, was great. And so I will stop the recording now and let's start talking, let's say, offline, so to speak. So let me just press the stop button here.